Athletes who return to sport before 9 months after an ACL reconstruction have a 7-fold higher risk of a second ACL injury, even if they pass the 90% limb symmetry test. Welcome to the Sunday Paper Roundup, where I read the paper so you don't have to. This week's paper is a scoping review from our very own 𝗍𝗃 journal here in the UK, looking at return to sport tests and criteria after ACL reconstruction. And the headline message is uncomfortable. We still don't have a standardized, evidence-based way to clear an athlete back to sport. The authors screened over 1,700 studies, they included 33, and synthesized data on more than 6,000 patients. Across all of those studies, the return to sport criteria were all over the place. And that matters because if the test battery is weak, inconsistent, or incomplete, then the decision to clear someone for return to sport is weak, inconsistent, or complete. What did the review find? Well, most return to sport protocols still rest on the same 4 pillars: time since injury, strength testing, jump and hop performance, and limb symmetry of 90% or more. Bloody dogs. Surrounded by mad dogs. Mad dogs and Englishmen. Alright, I'm filming here. Fuck's sake. Timing was usually 6 to 9 months, though more recent evidence in the discussion of this paper pushes the floor to at least 9 months. And you know that I always suggest waiting nearer 12 months for most people. Of course, professional athletes and physical freaks are accepted. Psychological readiness was reported reasonably often, but the more sport-specific domains were rare: biomechanical assessment, change of direction, agility, and reactive or neurocognitive demands. And that's the central problem. Sport is not performed on an isokinetic dynamometer. Sport is not a single hop for distance. Sport is not a symmetrical number in a controlled clinical environment. Sport is chaos, perception, reaction, deceleration, cutting, trunk control, fatigue, and movement quality under pressure. If your return to sport battery doesn't test those things, you may be measuring recovery in the clinic, but not readiness for sport. Where this paper is strong is that it exposes the mess. It shows clearly that no single test is enough, and that current protocols remain heavily weighted towards symmetry-based strength and hop performance. It also confronts the limitations of limb symmetry index head-on. Because we know that the contralateral limb deconditions too, 90% symmetry can simply mean that both limbs are underperforming, and that's something we don't think about enough. In one of the studies, only 28% of athletes who passed the 90% limb symmetry index threshold had actually reached their estimated pre-injury capacity. That is a major issue because clinicians can be falsely reassured by symmetry. Symmetry is not normality, and symmetry is definitely not performance. The paper is also right to flag that change of direction, reactive ability, biomechanics, and neurocognitive load are still underrepresented in return to sport testing, despite being highly relevant to how ACL injuries actually occur. But let's be honest about what this paper is and what it is not. It's a scoping review, not a systematic review designed to produce pooled effect estimates. It maps the landscape. It doesn't settle the argument. The included studies are highly heterogeneous: different sports, different levels of athlete, different graphs, different ages, different timelines, different return to sport definitions. That heterogeneity is the point of the paper, though, but also limits how prescriptive we can be. Some of the more advanced ideas, force plate analysis, 3D motion capture, dual task hopping, video-based cutting analysis, are clinically attractive, but not always practical in everyday settings and the non-elite settings. So the question isn't just what's ideal, it's what's scalable, affordable, and reproducible in real clinics. And finally, even good return to sport tests don't perfectly predict second injury. Some of the cited literature shows that passing return to sport criteria can increase the chance of return to sport, but still fail to identify those who will go on to sustain a second ACL injury. That matters. Return to sport is risk management, it's not risk elimination. So what should surgeons take from this? Well, don't think your job ends with a technically good reconstruction. If your patient is being cleared on the basis of a time point, a couple of hop tests, and a vague sense they look okay and strength seems about right, that's not enough. You need to understand and know what your rehab team is using for return to sport. If it doesn't include strength quality, movement quality, deceleration, confidence, and sport-specific demand, your patient may be returning with an underprepared system. And what should physios and strength and conditioning coaches take from this? Strength and hop symmetry still matter, but they're not the whole story. A patient can pass simple symmetry thresholds and still move poorly, over-rely on the uninvolved side, show poor deceleration mechanics, fall apart under fatigue, or be psychologically unready for chaos. This review supports a layered return to sport model, not a simplistic one. My bottom line, this paper doesn't prove current return to sport testing is useless, but it proves that it's often incomplete. Incomplete tests can create false confidence, and false confidence is what can hurt patients. So what's my verdict? Should you ignore this paper? Should you be aware of it? Should you consider it? Or should you go ahead and change your practice? Well, my verdict, consider it. Don't throw out strength tests or hop tests. Just stop pretending that symmetry and time alone means sport readiness. Add at least one ecologically valid task to your return to sport battery: a reactive cut, a dual task hop, an unplanned change of direction. Add the ACL RSI for psychological readiness, and anchor strength against body weight or a pre-injury baseline if you have it, not just the other side. Because most ACL return to sport testing still doesn't reflect the demands of sport, and that needs to improve. See you next Sunday. I'll keep breaking down the evidence as it lands.